So let us start with revising the basic structure of basal ganglia and all the structures that we need to know before diving into the functioning. So that is the head end of the caudate nucleus, and that would be the tail end. Then we have the putamen. Right medial to it, we have the globus pallidus externus. And we have the globus pallidus internus. Now, the basal ganglia also includes the substantia nigra and the subthalamic nucleus, which you will see in the diagram that I draw afterwards. So this forms the basal ganglia, and the basal ganglia is going to send fibers to, that's right, thalamus. It is going to send fibers to the thalamus. So here is just a descriptive view of all the structures that we just spoke about. It is not anatomically correct, but it's better for our understanding. So caudate and putamen together is called the striatum, and the globus pallidus internus, externus and putamen together is called the lentiform nucleus. And I'm going to be drawing the thalamus and subthalamus right here. The big one is the thalamus, and then we have the subthalamic nucleus right below it. Not anatomically, but in the diagram. And here we have the substantia nigra, which is going to send dopamine neurons to the striatum. And you remember the striatum is caudate and putamen together. So there are two receptors for it, D1 and D2. Now, simply put, there are going to be two types of neurons in this diagram, the stimulatory in green and the inhibitory in red. Now, you should know that the basal ganglia sends GABA inhibitory neurons only, right? So normally, as you can see, thalamus sends stimulatory neurons to the cortex, and subthalamic nucleus sends stimulatory neurons to the globus pallidus internus. Now let's talk about inhibition. Globus pallidus internus sends inhibitory neurons to the thalamus normally, and globus pallidus externus sends inhibitory neurons to the subthalamic nucleus. And now the direct and indirect pathway is going to be very simple for you. So firstly, I'm going to talk about the direct pathway. What happens when the D1 receptors are stimulated? The striatum is then going to send inhibitory neurons to globus pallidus internus. And what will happen then? There will be no inhibition to the thalamus, that is, it will get disinhibited, and thereby there will be increased stimulation to the cortex, which will cause, yes, it will cause more movement. Now let's talk about the indirect pathway. What will happen if the D2 receptors get stimulated by dopamine? Now the striatum is going to inhibit the globus pallidus externus, which will disinhibit the subthalamic nucleus, and that will send increasing stimulatory signals to globus pallidus internus, which will also cause increased inhibition of thalamus. And when thalamus is inhibited, definitely the cortex will get inhibited too, and that will lead to no movement or stopping of the movement. So that's about it. That is what direct and indirect pathway is.